Welcome to the Troxel Podcast. I'm Evan Troxel, and in this episode, I welcome Robert Otani and Alexandra Pollock. Rob is a longtime engineering leader known for bringing computation into practice at scale, and Alex is a design technology leader who has bridged architecture and engineering roles to make better tools for teams. Together, they've helped translate ideas from project rooms into digital capabilities that improve how architects and engineers work every day. In this episode, Rob and Alex share lessons on product thinking inside a services business, how to measure the ROI of innovation, and what it takes to reduce redundancy so teams can focus on work that actually moves projects forward. A key takeaway from this conversation is how they are fundamentally rethinking their practice around new technology. Instead of treating digital tools as add-ons, they are building their foundation on them, making technology the core of their operations and what I think is going to be a multiplier of their future potential. It's a bold repositioning that challenges traditional firm structures and points towards what is possible when leadership commits to transformation at every level. As usual, there's an extensive amount of additional information in the show notes, so be sure to check those out. You can find them directly in your podcast app if you're a paid supporter of Troxel Plus. And if you're a free member, you can find them at the website, which is trxl.co, which is also where you can join to become a supporting member. I really appreciate it. Lastly, please help the podcast by sharing these episodes with your colleagues and by commenting and sharing my LinkedIn posts. You can also leave a comment over on YouTube and engage with me and the other listeners. All of that really helps me get the podcast out there. And now, without further ado, I bring you my conversation with Robert Otani and Alexandra Pollock. Welcome to the podcast. Alex, first time on this show. Rob, we've talked together on our other Confluence podcast, and we've talked about some really neat things that you guys have been doing at Core Studio and Thornton Tomasetti. But Alex, this is a bit of a shift for you. I mean, not super recent. I think it's been about a year. Is that right?
Yeah,
Since you've
about a
moved
year and a half.
a year and a half. And we got to catch up. We all got to catch up in various incantations of that at the AIA conference, which was in Boston. And it was great to see you both there. But Alex, I would love it if you could kind of introduce your story as it's shifted maybe over the last few years and kind of where you were and how that has changed and what your experience has been going from architecture to a more focused engineering aspect to your role.
Sure, great. Yeah, happy to be here with you today, Evan. Great to catch up. So a little bit about my story. I went to school for architecture for an undergraduate degree. Really loved it. And towards the end of my time there, really kind of transitioned towards a focus on technology and computation, and decided to do a master's of engineering at Stevens, which was the first year of this program, which is called the Product Architecture and Engineering Lab. And it was a mix of design, analysis, and computer science. So really kind of touching all the areas that I was super interested in. So from there, I joined SOM, where I spent about 8 years really becoming an architect. I worked on a pretty wide variety of projects. I became licensed, but I also did a lot on the technology side. So a lot of computational design, different types of analysis around environmental or people movement, as well as really starting to dive into Revit and BIM as that started to become the main documentation platform that we were moving towards. And so that was a really great experience. I worked with a lot of really great people there. And I'd say also during that time, I taught some at Stevens. I taught there for about 5 years. I taught a class called Application to Numerical Optimization, which was based on some of the thesis work I had done as a student there, which is really about, how do you use math and algorithms to define and solve different types of problems. And so I'll kind of circle back around to that, but a few of the folks in Core Studio actually took that class, which was kind of fun. And so from there, after SOM, I joined FX Collaborative Architects, another really great firm. And I was there for about 11 years. I started as the Director of Design Technology there. It was a new role at the time. And they had begun their transition to Revit, but they were really looking to expand how they use technology throughout the entire firm. So I spent the first 5 years kind of building up our tool sets around different areas of visualization, BIM, computation, virtual reality, GIS, among others. And then about halfway through, we kind of took a step back and rethought about the technology strategy. And at that point, I took on the role of CTO, and that was to really kind of oversee our design technology, business technology, and IT. And so that's a little bit of my history. And about a year and a half ago, I joined Thornton Tomasetti, which has been really amazing. Like you said, it has been a shift from architecture to engineering. But the thing that really drew me to TT was the both the kind of commitment and investment to innovation and research and development that the firm has here. And so that's really given me the opportunity to delve more into that space and have more impact there. Um, I think one of the things that's been most fun moving from architecture to engineering is that it feels like it kind of brings me back to those optimization roots a little bit. The idea of, how do we really use technology to define and solve problems? And in engineering, there are concrete equations to some of these problems that we're trying to solve. And so that has been really fun to me. There's a little bit more deterministic rather than just,
Mm-hmm.
qualitative parts to that process. So that's been really great.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of like where I go from that. I loved how you said rethinking, like the strategy, and to me, that's really the theme of our conversation
Mm-hmm.
today is actually, and I'm curious because you've gone through this, and then and Rob, I would love to get you in on this too. It's like, when do you notice that's what you need to do? When do you
Yeah.
notice that you need to step back, as you said, and rethink?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just curious if that brings anything, Alex, to elaborate on a little bit in your story. Like, what was the push that said, "Hey, wait a minute, we need to stop and rethink this"?
I felt like we did a lot of really great stuff within that first 5 years, and we're building our technology sets, and I felt like we plateaued. Like I wasn't accelerating like at the same pace, and I kind of took that as like a bit of like a warning sign, like we should be moving
Mm,
faster,
mm,
And so and I had some ideas about areas that we should be getting more into around, especially around data as a firm. And FX, our team was pretty small. It was myself and a few other people on the design technology side. And we actually ended up deciding to bring in a consultant to help with the road mapping process. So we brought in Nate Miller from Proving Ground. And he went through this really great process of, meeting with the different user groups and pulling out insights. And I think working alongside somebody who was like a little bit removed from it was helpful to help kind of give the right perspective. So we were
mm.
able to get a lot of perspective from Nate in that process and then combine that with our own to kind of create a new strategy moving forward. And for us at the time, a lot of it was really breaking down the silos that we had in the firm to be able to connect the data together in better ways. We had certain data with accounting, certain data with project management, certain data in design technology, but we weren't necessarily tying that together as a story. So that was really kind of the goal of the kind of the repositioning.
Rob, I'm curious from your perspective. I mean, you've how long have you been at TT now?
Well, I'm a boomerang. So I started my career at TT in 1995. So worked for 5 years, sorry, and then at TT, and then left to two different companies for a span of 8 years, and then came back in
Mm,
2008. It was, and then I've been there ever since.
okay.
Um, so yeah, it's been a little bit of a journey, but a good one. I think
I
it's
ask how long you've been there because I feel like you've probably you talked to me a little bit about kind of going through a rethinking process again, but it's probably not the first time since you've been there for a while. Curious to hear
no,
about that.
it's 22 years. If you kind of roll up. Um, and I think part of how I got in technology in general was, um, just to be honest with you, just to be a better, more, you know, uh, thoughtful and productive structural engineer.
Hmm.
And I knew that, and I've been saying this recently. The day that we all had computers at our desk, which was about 2 years after I started, actually. So we didn't have computers for everybody. We had shared computers. Was the day that technology became the method in becoming a good engineer, and a good designer, and productive, because everything that we did was on a computer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I got into it. And I've been just, yeah, I'm a person who always believes that there's a better way to do things. And yes, I've learned a lot over my career, but there's always someone better. And so I always kind of want to be right, to be better at what I do.
Right. Well, let's talk about this new rethinking that you both are experiencing now together. This, to me, I think is really where I love hearing this kind of thing, that it's actually happening, but it's hard to find people who are willing to say it. And which is like there are these, clickbait version is like these existential threats to the industry, right? And then there's the realities of. I love how you framed that, Alex, right? Which is you felt like you plateaued, you weren't moving fast enough, or you didn't have this upward trajectory continuing, right? And so that to me is just one of those signs that okay, we need to do something different. Let's step back and do it. And Rob, you mentioned to me that okay, we've got this. We talked on the other podcast about what you guys have done with AI and training based on some certain expertise that exists inside, or it did exist inside Thornton Tomasetti, and you're able to use that information and create a tool from it that then brings value to your engineers. But it didn't stop there, right? Like you did this really cool thing that I think not a lot of firms can do because they don't have this incredible corpus of material to pull from to build a tool like you did. I'll put a link to that episode in the show notes so that people can refer to it.
Yeah.
But you then said, okay, and where are we going from there? I think this is what happened. And so maybe just kind of kick us off here and let's start to talk about what you've been dealing with, and then maybe we can get into how you're addressing it.
I will say, we started in Core Studio researching machine learning and AI in 2015. So it was a developer that worked for me. His wife was a data scientist. And he explained, I had no idea what machine learning was. And he explained to me what it was. Basically you take a bunch of solved problems, which is smart information, smart data. You use some, algorithms to train a model from that data, which is, if it's done right, it's going to be a smart sort of, information or tool, smart tool. And I said to myself, I was thinking at the time, isn't that what we do? Isn't that what a principal does? Like over time, they, solve problems, and in their head, they have, this sort of machine learning model, if you will, and that someone asks them a question, they know the answer right away without thinking about it. It's based on their experiences.
Yeah.
And so my thinking was, what if we take that information, pull it within the, the intelligence of the firm, which is kind of what we are built on, is the intelligence of the aggregate of the company, and have it accessible by those who don't know, someone that's young or hasn't dealt with that type of project before. That's like incredibly powerful for a consulting firm. I said this before, we as a consulting firm, we produce models and drawings and reports, but the reality is we are basically, we get paid because of our knowledge. And sort of the level of the common denominator is very high, right? But we think it could be much, much higher if we have this really crazy, powerful tool called AI that we can actually, sort of get all that knowledge out to people at the right time.
Right. Let's take a quick break from the conversation to tell you about Avail. Is your team struggling to find the BIM assets they need? Avail's content management system simplifies access to all of your firm's content in one easy-to-use platform. No matter where your files live or what type of files they are, you can easily search and access them from Avail. Now, designers can consistently find and reuse all types of content. So what does that mean? Well, standards-compliant models and drawings are easier to create. The documentation process is less chaotic. New hires are easier to onboard. Projects are delivered faster with fewer errors. You get the idea. Visit getavail.com to try Avail for free and request a free demo. That's getavail.com, GETAVAIL.com. My thanks to Avail for supporting this episode of the Troxel Podcast. And now let's get back to the conversation. Alex, I'm curious from your perspective, coming into Thornton Tomasetti, these sound like some really incredible projects to work on, especially in the role that, like, where you're at. And I'm just curious how that landed on you. Like, is that what you felt? Is that something that drew you to working at TT?
Yeah, for sure. I remember having conversations early on during the interview process about, how do we, manage knowledge as a firm, and how do we disseminate that? And that's something I had been thinking about, which was, it's really hard to get people the information at the right time. In our industry, we work on really complex projects, continue to get more complicated with really big teams. And I think AI is like a really great tool to be able to leverage the knowledge that we have internally to be able to deliver that information at the right time to people. Yeah, there's so much that you need to know, and you can't take it all in at once. So if we can leverage AI to do that, it's definitely a big win.
Yeah, Rob, the thing that you just said about, a principle and delivering, like that's what Alex is talking about, right? Delivering that years and years of experience and wisdom in the moment. And somebody recently, I think it was Chris Parsons on a recent episode here, he was like, experts don't know what they know.
That's true.
You know all this stuff, but you don't know that you know all that stuff, because it literally happens in the moment. And I think that is such an interesting thing about humans in this space, but then also taking that information and actually storing it somewhere where everybody has access to it.
I mean, I might rephrase it a little bit differently in that humans know a lot, right? Especially professionals in our business. What is always difficult is for those professionals, those subject matter experts, I'll use the Grasshopper terminology, decompose how they got to that answer. They probably don't remember all the, the events and the situations, but they have that embedded. And that's like also why it's difficult to get it out of those people as well. It's buried in their brains, and I'm just as guilty of it. But it's an interesting problem, I will say.
So one thing that I think is, striking me now is kind of this idea that you are a service-oriented firm. You get hired for your expertise. Actually, that's my one interaction with a TT employee was as I had a curtain wall consultant on a project, and I was just constantly like enamored with this guy. His name was Mark, and he was an expert, and he knew it's like, okay, we need to come up with a detail for this, and it was just
Mark Donatello.
And he would just draw it out, and it was so fun to work with him because he had all the answers and he could just literally spit it out in real time. He didn't have to go away and say, let me think about that, which is, it's a valuable trait too. But it was also just so fun to work with Mark. And I'm thinking about how, you've got this service-oriented firm, you have a reputation, years. How old is TT?
I think all told, over 75 years old.
Okay, so I mean, like huge reputation, right? And you need to kind of now think about rethinking the way things are. And I'm just curious, what do you, both of you? I mean, well, let's start with you, Rob. Like how important is it to rethink your practice? Because like 75 years, obviously there's value in doing things the way you've done them. And I think there's a lot of firms who think like, well, let's double down on that. But then there's this other perspective that you're bringing, which is like, oh, okay, there's new tools. There's this new like we should actually step back and rethink this. And then I'm curious, where this goes, because it's like then it's the hard part. Like, how do we actually set a new course? If it is potentially like a totally new course, how do we get everybody on board to do that?
Well, we do have to rethink what we do, because, well, there's a lot there.
Yeah, I know.
One, there's a lot
We
there.
got time. I hope you have time.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's fine. I would say one, the traditional method of how you learn, like I did over, 15 years to become even reasonably, I would say, to the level that Mark was, right? To have that sort of corpus of information just in your head, it takes a long, long time to do. So what we're seeing with AI is that you can infuse that, if you will, much, much faster. So instead of 15 years, it'll take 5 or 10 for someone, or whether they know it or they have access to it. From a consulting standpoint, it's the same thing, right? They'll have an answer that is smart, that is the right thing to do, or right advice to give. So that's one. So how the rate at which we get to become a productive professional is going to change if people adopt the technology correctly. The other is a lot of the startups within our space are trying to do what we do. I mean, actually doing structural engineering and architecture, and robotics will do construction tasks. And our clients, just from the ones that I talk to, are very interested in those. They're investing in those startups. So what does that mean? That means that there's going to be a portion of what we do that will be performed by a startup, an application, that leverages the best technology using AI or other means and methods to get to an answer which is good enough for what they need to do, particularly in my thinking is early design phases.
Yeah.
Right. So with all of that, I think that we need to rethink what we do in terms of, we can't just think about doing the conventional consulting, because I think it's going to shrink if we don't get ahead of it over time.
Yeah, and I think about like tools that you've developed, right? Like I've mentioned this before to you. I think it was Daniel Seagraves at a USC BIMBOP talking about Asterisk, which was a tool that you guys put out there to you could upload a Rhino massing model, you could choose one of 3 different structural systems, and it would actually do a lot of the calculations, and it would give you kind of a breakdown, and it was a really amazing tool that is doing what you're exactly what you're talking about right now, except it was you were doing it to yourself, right? Which I think is super interesting.
Yeah, the Asterisk was, and we call it Asterisk 2 now. We have a new updated version, which is much more accurate, much more robust. But what was interesting about that at that time, which is about 2017, 2018, when we had that out there, was that engineers, were a little bit scared of it. They were like, wait a minute, that's what I do for a living. But also because we're trained this way, engineers are trained this way, that it wasn't 100% accurate. So therefore it was not reliable, which is a valid statement, except
100% accurate at early concept. Is anything 100% accurate that early?
No, but it's both a human thing but also that's what is in their mind, that the work that they produce is 100% accurate. And so this app that was producing less than 100%, it's probably 90% accurate, which again, for an experienced engineer is good enough, actually, right? It's the level of information that the architect needs to keep moving with their design, potentially feed off of that information that they're getting and come up with a new design, who knows? But that was an interesting one. And AI at the time was very, very black box. We didn't document anything about the app. It was like, here it is. That's it. Take it or leave it. So, but it was doing, um, basically a team's worth of work in a minute that would normally take a team like 2 or 3 weeks to do.
Yeah.
It's just, it wasn't, again, in the minds of engineers at the time, which I think was justifiable, was not trustable to use in a real project.
You remember that tool, Alex?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, TT came and gave a demonstration where I was working at the time, which was really fun. Yeah, it was a really great tool, very exciting. I think, Rob and I have had a lot of conversations about Asterisk since I've started too, and I've seen him present on it a few times. I think one of the things that I really love about Asterisk 1.0 is, what it did for Core Studio and for TT. And there's like so many lessons learned that happen in that process. Like Rob was saying, that idea of having more transparency, building more trust in the results that are coming out. And that's something that's been incorporated into a lot of the AI tools that we create now. It focused on one building topology. So our new version focuses on multiple topologies. But it also, like, that early experimentation into AI and like that time to try something and get those lessons learned back in, Rob, you said it was like 2017. Like, that's what's helped accelerate what the team's been able to do, kind of moving into that space. And I feel like that's part of like why we are where we are now with the tools that we have. So I think that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got to build over time to get to. I mean, you guys are an amazing case study, and I actually want to take a step back. Rob, can you just explain the whole Core Studio concept, where that came from? Because you are now a case study. How did you get to become a case study? I would love to hear the story.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Core Studio, if I go all the way to the beginning, started in about 2010 or 11, and it was basically just myself and Jonathan Schumacher, who he was a CATIA expert, and I was, structural engineering guy. Maybe I knew how to draw a line or two in Rhino, and that was the extent of it. But I was also a special structures person at Thornton Tomasetti. So, advanced modeling and FEA was an important part of what we did. So I was teaching at the time at Pratt Institute, and I saw the students using Grasshopper. And I said, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Parametric, it's, sort of very customizable, looks like it's fairly easy to use. So we both took Grasshopper courses from, I don't know if you remember those guys, called Mode Lab in Brooklyn, and Greenpoint. And he became an expert at it, and I'm still a beginner to this day. But we understood, at least I know what the power of it is. And we started using it on projects straight away, having connectors, to Revit and structural engineering tools. And so, again, I have to give credit to the CEO at the time, which was Tom Scarangello, who saw the value in all of that. We were getting better work product, much faster sort of response time with our clients. And a lot of our clients were using Grasshopper as well. So it was a way to communicate beyond, a PDF sketch.
Yeah.
Right. We were sharing models. So that's how it started as purely a modeling team. And then we started getting more into R&D. And so that's when we rebranded, which was originally called Advanced Computational Modeling, to Core, which really stands for Computation Plus Research. And again, it grew from there. We started to hire application developers. At the time, Justin Nardone ran the R&D part of it, so the firm-wide R&D part of it. And he has his own company now. And now it's much bigger. We have the digital design, or just sort of the BIM work. We have the Tekla team, the delivery team, knowledge and data, app dev, and also the modeling, AI. So it's a much bigger team, and that's where Alex has been really instrumental in getting all of our ducks in a row, because that, we were not nearly as large in the beginning. So it's become not just, a cool R&D team, but also sort of driving our practices, accelerating what we do in our practice work.
Yeah. Let's take a short break from the conversation to invite you to join the most influential technology leaders in the AEC industry at Confluence. Composed of in-person events and a podcast co-hosted by yours truly, Confluence is designed to foster conversations between AEC firms and technology companies so they can learn, share, and engage with each other to support industry innovation. Software company Avail, which creates content management solutions for the AEC industry, started hosting Confluence events in 2019 to understand what firms are needing, wanting, and thinking around technology. To learn more about Confluence, explore upcoming events, and listen to podcast episodes, go to confluence.getavail.com. My thanks to Confluence for supporting this episode of the Troxel Podcast. And now, let's get back to the conversation. Alex, obviously this is an amazing new role, and I want to talk about what you're doing. Before we do that, though, can you kind of compare and contrast what Rob just talked about with kind of this vision that the CEO had of creating this advanced modeling group and then what turned into Core Studio, and like that vision of intentional investment to get from here to there, and not even knowing where there was, but just saying, wow, there's potential. I love how you said it, Rob, like you're still a beginner at Grasshopper. I remember teaching the executives at my firm Grasshopper. I'm not teaching them so that they learn Grasshopper. I'm teaching them so that they understand the potential of it, so that they enable people to use it. And I think that's a good internal strategy for those out there who are struggling with why are we using these tools? Why are we chasing down they're not the tools that we use. These are other. That's a good way to get people's kind of awareness and the right exposure to it. But Alex, can you compare and contrast that with what you've seen in the architecture side of things, with this intentional vision about internal R&D? I'm curious about your experience at FX and maybe previous to that SOM, but just your general perception of the architectural side as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody in the industry wants to do R&D and wants to be innovative. And I have felt that all the places I've worked. But I think that until you actually make the commitment at the firm-wide level to make the investment in the time and the people, it can be difficult to pull it off. And I feel like I've gone back and forth over the years, the different places I've worked. I do think that doing research and development within projects can be amazing, and it gives you the place to actually have like a real world problem that you're developing a solution to. But one of the things that we would often run into is just the time constraints of the project timeline and the space to develop that research and development. So I think by enabling some overhead to do the research and development and start to prep that, so when that project need comes along, that then you can partner with the project and drive the innovation forward. That seems to be a better approach, kind of get more traction in that way. So, for me, I really think it's intentionally making that commitment within, financially with the people and with the overall culture of the firm too. You want to feel that if you try something new, or you want to develop something, that you're going to have the kind of buy-in of the leadership of the firm and you're going to be recognized for it.
Mm-hmm. How much of R&D is failure? If you were just like put a gut percentage on it, because I think this is one of the things that actually, like, people, we're starting R&D, we're starting this innovation incubator inside our firm. And this is like the early story of Revit, right? Export to AutoCAD, we give up, right? Like that was those early projects. It was like, we just can't handle the amount of failure. We just need to go back to what we know. I'm just curious from a gut level, what each of you, Rob, what do you think that number is?
I think it also defines what we consider failure.
Yeah.
I would say
Oh, for sure, for sure.
you know, I mean, failure being, something that we completely discard
Hmm.
is a small number. I think everything that we do, we either, at a minimum, we do a better job at next time.
Yeah.
We may create a better tool next time.
Hmm.
And Alex has been involved, since he's been here with the firm-wide R&D program, which is called Core Lab. And, I would say the ideas that come from our staff,
Mm-hmm.
particularly the ones that participate in this program, which is not everybody, it's a select few, tend to be really, really good.
Mm.
I mean, there's probably a 95% success rate for those projects. So very small failure. And, the hope is that it inspires other people as well. Um, so I don't know, Alex, you could
Yeah. Jump in.
comment
Yeah.
on that as
No,
well.
that's great. Yeah, Core Labs is like one of my favorite things here at TT. Um, and so there's a couple different ways that the firm solicits ideas. So one are these innovation tournaments that will happen at a local office. So they are these full day events and go through this process of just ideating different ideas, creating what we call a quad chart that kind of explains like the business plan and how you would develop it. Um, Everybody gets like 60 seconds to present their idea. We vote on it. There's like 4 finalists, and then people team up and they take those ideas to the next level for the second part of the day. And we vote at the end and have a final winner. So, but out of that will come, 30 to 40 different ideas that all have quad charts already. And then the other is that there'll be like a call for proposals twice a year, also quad charts you can just submit anytime. And then peers within the firm volunteer to review those and then vote on which one should get funding. And so actually a lot of the R&D proposals are funded. So people get time and money to work on that. Sometimes it's time, money towards certain equipment that they would get. But I think like what Rob said is it really allows um, the ability to generate those ideas from the grassroots. Like what's working on your project, what's not working, what's a new business area that we could go into. And that's a really fun way just to see what everybody is thinking in the firm about like where we can build efficiencies, where we can build innovation.
This whole like quad chart thing and budget, I want
Mm-hmm.
to ask you about if you have like a not like a dollar figure, but maybe a percentage of
Mm-hmm.
like what you guys are actually spending on R&D versus like revenue, because I know like Nate, you brought up Nate Miller earlier, Alex, right? It's like I think he said in his presentations it's like less than 3% of AE firms budget will be spent back into R&D. It's a really small number, right? So again, like going back to that perspectives question about innovation in the industry, that's probably gone up since I've seen that presentation, which was admittedly a while ago, but still, it's probably still a small number. And so I know it sounds like you guys are investing decently into this, and this idea of a quad chart, it sounds to me like you're actually charging your staff to think about this entrepreneurially.
Mm-hmm.
And that could, I guess, it could be a tool that's only internal. It could be a tool that you're going to spin off into another
Mm-hmm.
company, I guess. I mean, I'm sure there's various options here, but that's super interesting to me that you're basically saying you have to kind of think of the business plan as well when it comes to this. And maybe, I don't know if that's what the quad chart really
Mm-hmm.
is, but is that what it is?
Yeah, the quad chart, it starts off with like, what's your idea? Why do you think it's important?
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to do it? What's the business plan? And, what's your just overall strategy and timeline and people that are required, as well as budget.
Because I
Yeah,
think a lot of times it's just blue sky. Oh, we want it,
yeah.
and we don't know where we're going, and then therefore we don't know how we're going to get there, and we don't know how long it's going to take, and we don't know
Mm-hmm.
what the resources are, but we're going to go, right? And we see that over and over again as well.
So the idea of the innovation tour, we didn't make up. There's a book out there. I think it
Mm-hmm.
was developed at the Wharton School of Business, and it's was introduced by us by our applied science practice leader Pavel Walke. And there's 3 sort of buckets of R&D. There's the adjacent, incremental, and what's our last
Transformational.
transformational, which is like the blue sky. And the ideas do trend, with most being adjacent, some being incremental, and one or two being blue sky.
Because it's like scratching your own itch, kind of. Like you've got, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And so the other benefit of all that is that Alex and I get to see trends. So we go to various offices. They can be a different region, different, speak a different language potentially. But the trends tend to be important for us because then we can make decisions based on what we do in our studio, for next year or whatever, to make some impacts. Because I think, what executives in the firm don't see is those trends. They're not hearing about it on the ground like we are, which is part of our job, is to sort of do that translation.
So can we talk a little bit about budget, or if you have any guidance? Because I'm curious what you guys are intentionally doing around that. I just make sure that you're innovating. You're making sure you're innovating. You're not just hoping it happens.
So I just did the math on my.
You're an engineer, of course you did.
Yeah, I had to do it on my head because I'm terrible at doing math on my head. So on pure R&D, firm-wide R, it's only like 0.1%. Yeah, it's not a big number. I mean, we're a big firm, so
it sounds cultural though. Like it just sounds bigger than like what you're describing is bigger than 0.1%.
0.1% is, for a company as large as is not a small number.
Yeah.
It's thousands and thousands of person hours. That's what it boils down to. Because it's direct rates. We're not charging our clients. We're not charging ourselves.
Right.
So it's actually a lot of hours and it's a lot of output. To the point where, we struggle with figuring out what to do next with a lot of these ideas. And then we have to start to prioritize. We can't do everything.
Yeah.
Get it to the next level, but we can start to prioritize. Again, that's where sort of, the business impact comes into play. What if something takes 10 years or 5 years or 2 years, and then we have to weigh the impact as well.
But it sounds like this is kind of happening all the time. I mean, so, some firms will do like this innovation tournament kind of a thing. Maybe they'll do it once a year. Maybe they'll do it every other. I'm just kind of, I'm projecting out there. And that what you just said, where it's like we have to figure out what we're going to do next, but it sounds cultural. Like these ideas are just constantly coming up, and there's no shortage of good ideas, right? And then you're in the position of having to prioritize. Great position to be in, right? You've got all this stuff. Let's now work on the stuff that's going to have the most impact. But it sounds like the participation is obviously awesome, right? So how do you keep that going? Because how do you get that to be cultural? Because I could see if it's just a once a year thing that another firm might do, you pick up steam and then you lose steam, and then you've got to rebuild again that momentum again, and that's hard, right? And so it sounds like you guys are keeping the momentum going.
I mean, I don't think Alex and I would be here if it wasn't part of our culture.
Yeah,
to be honest. Right. I mean, it's just so, if you go back to the roots of Thornton Tomasetti, which is, Paul Weidlinger Associates, Lev Zetlin, and Charlie Thornton and Richard Tomasetti, and on. These are all innovators. I mean, we wouldn't be, it's in our DNA. And again, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. So it's fun to see. I mean, we're bystanders in most, if not all of the R&D projects. We just sort of use our experience to guide them in the right direction, make sure they're not doing something that we've already done before, say. But it's cool to see, actually.
Alex, on the architecture side, I think a lot of times that innovation is seen as happening on projects, but not to the firm itself. I mean, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, probably for a lot of firms. That the projects really do provide a great opportunity to work towards that innovation. And I think, because projects are one-off. You try to recycle what you can from one project to the next and reuse those scripts or reuse the innovation that you were doing. So I do really strongly feel that projects are a fantastic way to drive innovation, but you just have to be able to carve out the time in the project to do it. So maybe there's some non-billable hours that you could put in there to help drive some of that innovation as well.
Yeah. Hey everyone, let's take a quick break from the conversation to pay some bills around here. This episode of Troxel is brought to you by Troxel Plus members. That's right, my incredible paid supporter members are making this episode possible. Their direct support ensures that I can continue exploring the intersection of architecture, technology, and the future of design with the leading voices in our industry directly to you. So let's talk about why you might consider financially supporting the podcast too. By becoming a Troxel Plus supporter, you're not just helping sustain these conversations, you're also gaining exclusive benefits like ad-free episodes of the show and my Leadership Edge email newsletter, where I analyze episodes and deliver the insights and key takeaways right into your inbox. Your small contribution makes a huge impact. And if you've been enjoying Troxel and want to be part of the community that keeps it thriving, please consider joining today. Head on over to trxl.co and click the subscribe button either in the upper right-hand corner or at the bottom of the page, or you can visit the link that I've put into the show notes. Once again, my sincerest thanks to the Troxel Plus members who have made this episode of the podcast possible, even though they aren't even hearing this ad because theirs are ad-free. Now, let's get back to the conversation. It's also, you have these different departments, especially in these larger firms, that it's hard to share information between stuff's locked inside people's heads. And I can see, again, like a huge opportunity for, this idea of scratching your own itch, where you've got people on the ground who are throwing these ideas out, and then the firm intentionally investing in those to take care of those things as the firm itself gets more complicated. Not just the projects, right, but the teams.
Yep.
And the projects, and the departments, and the number of offices, and the way that they communicate and share information and find information when it's needed. All that is getting more complicated as we accumulate more time and as there's turnover and churn and all those things. And so, it does take an intentionality to work on the business and not just on the output of the business, right?
Yeah. I do feel like there are firms that are diving into that stuff as well. Like I know at FX, like we were really looking at like transforming our data infrastructure and how we did project management and all of that. So I do think that work is happening as well in a lot of firms. Maybe it's not publicized as much because it's not as flashy as that, project with the curvy geometry. But, I remember this discussion I had where we said like, to be data driven, like you really have to have a good foundation, and that foundation is like our projects and our project data. And so I think a lot of firms are in situations where maybe they don't have the best project data to build their data foundation on. And that work of cleaning it up is not, it's like you said, Evan, it's not sexy. It's not, super exciting thing that you can post on LinkedIn. But I think it's actually one of the most transformational things that firms can do is to really get their foundation set of their data infrastructure to drive some of that other stuff.
Rob, you were going to say something too.
No, I was just going to say, one of the side benefits of our innovation tournaments is that it just gets people in one location. They can actually talk to each other.
Yeah.
You'll be amazed.
Sounds so simple, right?
It sounds so simple. And, I would say the interpersonal relationships and communication and how they work together gets supercharged just by this one day of activity, because they get to know each other. They get to know that they have common interests. There are, in today's world, you can be sitting 10 feet from someone and not actually have a conversation with them, or a meaningful conversation, I would say.
Yeah.
It happens.
I think that's a great point. It goes back to the culture thing that you were saying, Evan. And, and even like the presentations that we do for core labs across the firm, it's open to everybody in the firm. It's like open to all 2,000 people can join and listen to the work that happened over the cycle.
Nice.
Yeah.
Rob, can you give any examples of the things that you are now rethinking or attempting to rethink? I don't even know how to categorize it, but it sounds overwhelming to kind of think about this as a new paradigm and rethinking, not like the lightweight version, but the heavyweight version. Can you give us some ideas about that?
I think the heavyweight version is going to be how we, well, let's just say it's been very, I would say, status quo in terms of how we deliver our services and schematic design and DD and the CDs and all of that. And I think in the near future, we're going to make shortcuts into how we get our information directly to fabricators.
Hmm.
And so that's one part of it. So, we're thinking very seriously and working on what it does mean, because we kind of do that on very high profile projects. Get the construction started way earlier than what we normally would do for known items. I think the other part is rethinking how we do design with our architect clients. It's the conventional way of, like you had mentioned today, well, I'll go away for a week and come back with an answer. And as you know, being on the architecture side, by a week is an eternity
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to design iterations and thinking. So what we're trying to do with our AI tools is create these, almost real-time feedback loops, with the understanding that the design will, change just from a normal process, or potentially be inspired, to go in a different direction based on our feedback. So it's kind of, design is recursive in many ways, as it goes to the engineers and back to the architects, which I think is fun. The fun part, that's providing a real valuable service. The worst thing that could happen is, which happens on projects, is that we're not getting information in time to be meaningful, to have a smart design.
Yeah,
that happens all the time.
yeah. The first example that you provided about getting to fabrication directly, I think that's super interesting, because you see incredible ideas being put out there, but it sounds to me like you're really trying to go directly to making it real, instead of, because we see early on, like especially with the image making and the video making stuff, you see amazing stuff that it cannot be built, right? It's like, and that's fine. Like early stage is the best time for that kind of stuff. Like, let's just say what if, and that's fine. Like that is a lot of the design process. It's about the ideas and about communication, and then having those conversations and learning through those. And we get to reality. We have to get to reality, or else it's a worthless process, right? It sounds so interesting that you're kind of really keying in on that, so that the stuff that you're working on, like you said, these known items can get built, and communicating directly with, I would assume, the machines in those shops to be able to pull that kind of stuff off with different material tolerances depending on what you're working with. I think that's super interesting that you're going directly to there as a service provider for architects.
Yeah, well, I mean, before it gets to machines, we have a whole practice, which is one of our most profitable practices, that all they do is steel modeling, fabrication modeling for contractors.
Okay.
The vast majority of the projects that they work on are Thornton Tomasetti projects. Not always, not all projects are designed by us. But, they have the expertise to know what's possible, what's not possible in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And the faster you can get that information to the design side, the better. We're not going to go down, some crazy road that, we get to a CDs and figure, oh, that's, 20% more than we anticipated, or it's just not possible in the environment that it is today. So, I see that not just from all, subcontractors being a way we should. Again, this goes back to a very philosophical issue is, back when I started, it was kind of very clear what was when we issued drawings, what was meant to be interpolated by the subcontractors and sort of, you know, you know, gone from an LOD 300, we didn't even use those terms back then, to an LOD 500 level. And with the advent of BIM, it kind of got blurred a little in a way that was potentially not good, which was they anticipated a very high level of design, but they were still only getting PDFs at the end of the day, right? The same information as what they had prior. So, what gets sort of interpolated by the subcontractors was sort of not communicated or not 100% understood. So I think once we get to the point of having subcontractor is very clear what data, forget about the drawings, what data they need to have a really tight bid or have a buildable set of maybe not drawings, maybe it's just a problem that buildable model. The industry will take a huge leap, but it's going to take a long time to get there because standard of care issues mainly. We have the capability right now to do that.
I'm curious what advice you would give to firms out there who aren't rethinking, right? Things are changing, whether people are participating or not, right? And so I'm curious from both of your standpoint, what would you advise them to do in this situation?
I mean, I would say that they should start somewhere. They shouldn't just stay still. It could be as simple as, taking a short course on AI and understanding what its capabilities are and starting to think about how you apply that to practice. But I do think that, if you stay still as a firm, you're not going to grow, you're not going to progress. The opposite's going to happen. So you need to be out there seeing what's happening, looking at how you can adopt new strategies and methods in your firm. Don't have to do it all at once, but just start small, start somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think, I think, when BIM came around in 2004, whenever it was, Thornton Tomasetti was, for all our new projects, we went 100% BIM in 2008, which was early. And a lot of engineers at that time took a wait and see approach. And it took them years to, it had to be written in the contracts, right, for them to actually do it. And
engineers said, "Make me." Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it was a process. We had a whole training regimen for engineers to learn Revit at that time. And so, look, even if it's just training your staff, you're upskilling to some level. Do better Revit, learn Rhino inside Revit, learn Grasshopper, whatever. You're going to increase your at a minimum your level of producible. You increase the sort of deliverable. But at best, you're going to have be profitable with some investment, right? There's some investment that's needed to upskill people, and people don't have the time these days. Not that I had the time back in the day either, but I think it needs to be intentional upskilling, whether it's AI or even not AI. I mean, AI, I think is the big gorilla there that needs to be addressed. But
it does seem to be,
yeah.
I'm curious if you see these tools and ways of working in this rethinking adding value so that you can actually, it's like, I'll just reduce this down. Can you charge more because you have these skills, or is it we're just trying to stay at this stasis? Like, we're trying to do better with what we have and just be more efficient at what we're doing. I think a lot of times there's kind of this rethinking, and then there's this just, okay, how do we apply this and just how do we make it fit into our current way of working versus rethinking what we're doing? So I think those are two kind of different mindsets. But I'm curious, like, when you see all of this investment happening, is it making you more valuable? Is it allowing you to charge more? Is it allowing you to reach certain goals? Like, money may not be the answer. It might be something else. I'm just curious, like, how you see that playing out. Is it just relevance? I don't know.
I guess I could start off with this one. I think, Rob was talking before about the kind of like the core, the adjacent, and the transformational. So I think you can do kind of both of those things at the same time. I think you can work towards like building, efficiency around the things you do every day. At the same time, thinking about how you can transform things within the practice and new ways of working. Um, so yeah, I think you do both.
Yeah, I think you have to, and again, I will say it's not easy because our projects, fees are tight, no question about it. They're going to get tighter. I guess that's the issue as things go down the line. I will say also, it's also important that our clients are getting educated as well, and they're starting to use AI. And so even to be, in line with the thinking of your clients, you need to have the same mindset as they are. They're seeing the value. I think that's what the biggest sort of, transformation of generative AI is that anyone can use it now. What's like Grasshopper, sort of exercise. You can get a lot of information from using ChatGPT or one of the other Gen AI tools, and it's pretty amazing. And so, our clients are smart. They're saying to themselves, how can I do a feasibility study without spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars and hiring an entire team?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so we need to be thinking the same thing in a way, like to align with what our clients are thinking and the goals of our clients, and have the ability to do it, Look, we're even seeing AI clauses in our contracts now. Sometimes, well, I know for a fact in the state of California, if you do public work, there's a statement of Gen AI in those projects. But some of our clients have a clause, that they potentially want to restrict certain AI tools, like, I'll use an example because there's danger there. If someone uploads a project brief to ChatGPT, the world has it now, and there's a lot of, items in there that are under NDA. Clients don't want that information being floating around the internet. So, to both of our points, at a minimum, start with awareness, I would say, and education around the latest and greatest, because it's moving fast, like really fast. I'm sure you've used the latest tools. It's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. I just wanted to finish up our conversation and talk about the AECtech event that's coming up in November. And the reason I bring that up is because you're obviously investing inside Thornton Tomasetti quite a bit, but you also host this event. And could you just kind of introduce what that event is, and we can get down to how people could potentially attend and participate?
Yeah. Alex, want to take a shot at that?
Sure. So AECtech is our external event, like you mentioned, Evan. And the big event that we do in New York happens over a week in November. And it starts off with some virtual workshops. Then we have some tours. One day is tours kind of around New York, looking at different buildings or structures. And then another day is a tour within offices throughout New York City. And then we have a day that's focused on workshops. And the workshops, we really bring in experts from around the industry to come and do like really nerdy workshops in different areas. So if you want to get like really into the weeds of like what an MCP is, or, get really into coding something, they're great. And then we have the full day symposium. And so that we typically have a full day of speakers, some are roundtables, sometimes I'll have a keynote, we'll have a couple presentations. It would kind of mix it up each year. And actually, I spoke at the first AECtech in 2012. So it's been going on for 13 years now. And it's just a really great place to connect with other folks in the technology community. I find that the technology community in the AEC has always been really willing to share ideas and knowledge with each other, which is something that I really appreciate. So it's just fun to get together with different folks, talk about what you're doing at your firm, what's working, what areas are you innovating in. So that's awesome. And then it's capped off with a hackathon, which is typically over the weekend. It's about 24 hours. It starts noon on Saturday and I think ends around noon on Sunday. And we get people from all over. We do these like lightning round where people talk about either something they're interested in building or something they like to do, like they like to code or they like to make PowerPoint presentations or they're good at strategy. And then after that lightning round, people just organically form groups. It's like people have never met each other before and they just form these groups and they like, let's work on this idea for the next 24 hours. And so you get people from different firms, different backgrounds, different capabilities. And yeah, they work on it for 24 hours. They present on Sunday. Hopefully they sleep a little bit in between. And then there's a judging that happens for, best overall, best collaborative hack. And there's been
Best
some
open
just,
source.
best open source. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's been just really amazing ideas that have come out of that community over the year. Speaking of open source, everything is open source. So that's one of the requirements. Like everything you develop during that time has to be open source. But from that's also been some like cool different products and companies that have even started. So it's just a great way to get involved in the tech community. You don't have to be a programmer. You don't have to be like super nerdy to participate. Any kind of involvement you have is great. So that's kind of a synopsis. And so if people are interested in joining, they can go to the AECtech website. You have options. You could pick just a symposium. You could pick symposium hackathon. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a great community builder. I feel within the individuals that come that make it. And I was mentioning this to Alex last year, and because that lightning round is, again, people just, first of all, there's usually about 100 people who join this. They're not getting paid. They're doing this for fun. They're there to learn something. I think there was about 35 ideas that were pitched in about 15 to 20 minutes, I would say. Maybe it was a half an hour. In about 15 to 20 minutes after the presentation of those ideas, teams were formed. I don't know the psychology of all of that. Something happened, something in the air, in the vibe of the room. They find their home that they want to spend the next 26 hours.
That's so cool.
It's really cool. It's crazy. I can't explain it, but that happens. And they're friends forever. I wouldn't say forever, but they're they don't know each other. These people don't know each other.
Developing friendships for sure. Yeah, that relationship's really cool. And what are you guys doing during this event, like through the hackathon? What are you walking around? Are you keeping tabs on things? Are you giving people pep talks? I'm just curious.
Usually we're sweating it out to make sure that the Wi-Fi works, and that's pretty much it. Our group, because we have a lot of good software developers, tend to act as either join teams directly or act as sort of technical support. My role is just make sure there's enough food and drink and coffee to keep people happy. But that's pretty much it. It's a fun event.
Yeah.
It's worth coming to various pieces and parts of that.
How competitive is it? I mean, I'm just curious. I'm sure it's like a camaraderie competition, but these teams are building something, and they're you only get a certain amount of time to do it. So there's there's definitely like they're going for it. Like what's that like?
It's a fun competitive. It's
Yeah.
It's actually surprisingly laid back, like very, very laid back.
You're saying there's no sabotage? I want to see. Yeah.
No, I mean,
No
not that I
sabotage,
know
no.
of. Maybe Rob has stories.
Well, first of all, we do give prizes, but the prizes is you're not going to be retiring on these prizes, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be like fun things. So I would say people just help each other out, even other teams.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the fun part of it. And some really, really cool stuff comes out of it. We put the we even give GitHub links, I think, to all the projects on the AECtech.us website. So yeah, it's really fun. And I will say, from our perspective, it's a way for us to keep sort of on sort of up to speed of what's kind of happening out there, just to keep a pulse on what's happening. And it's certainly impacted our thinking over the years of which way we think we're going. I mean, I didn't hear about MCPs until we did the London hackathon in April. It was relatively new technology. Everyone was running, jumping up and down about it. And I was like, what is all this? And now we're using it in our own practice, right? So 6 months, 10 years ago was not significant. Today it is significant.
Yeah.
From adopting new technologies. So
that's a great position for you guys to be in, but it's also, I mean, it takes an incredible commitment to continue to keep doing this. And I mean, it takes resources and it takes planning and events are not easy.
Credit goes to Dave Mans, who's you don't know Dave Mans, he's like a Grasshopper sort of king out there. He's written more open source tools than probably anybody out there, but he's the one who organizes the entire thing, top to bottom.
Well, I will include links to everything that we talked about in the show notes that I can think of that we did talk about, and I'll put links to you two so people could connect with you on LinkedIn and follow along with the cool things that you're doing with Core Studio and Thornton Tomasetti and the event that's coming up in November, right in the middle of November. So thank you both so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Evan.
Thanks, Evan. Appreciate it.
Thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to our members this week. Find out how you can become a member at trxl.co, and I'll talk to you again next week.